What's up, everybody? Andy Lang from WagerTalk.com. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Life in the Fast Lane. We've got a couple of recaps to go through with NASCAR and Formula One, and then Formula One's on spring break, summer break. They are going to be off for a month, so we're just going to concentrate on NASCAR here. But, betting-wise, we'll start off with that. I had a horrible week a couple weeks ago, and we rebounded nicely with a 4-0 last week on NASCAR and Formula One. So I knew regression was coming. We had it a couple weeks ago, and then we come back really, really strong. So really proud. Bumps us back up over 60% for the year. And if you want all the plays, they can be found on WagerTalk.com. Obviously, we're not going to be having any Formula One plays for about a month, but we can concentrate on NASCAR. So go grab those on WagerTalk.com. And also, please leave me your best bets, picks, and who you like for this week's race in Michigan. I've got a free bet coming up at the end of the show, which I got to say I love. It's one of my more favorite free bets we've had. This checks a lot of boxes, so stay tuned to the end of the video. We'll go over that. Let's just start with the NASCAR race. They were in Indianapolis, and it was full of drama. It was full of excitement. We had great pit stop strategies. We had Ross Chastain doing Ross Chastain things, and we have Tyler Reddick winning a race and then moving to another team, which is always kind of weird. So the recap, Chase Briscoe wins stage 1, Christopher Bell wins stage 2, Tyler Reddick wins the race. I don't take too much away from the stages because obviously some guys were pitting right before the stage closed. That way they could be set up good for the next run. So I think that's kind of important when we're looking at some of these stage 1 and stage 2 winners is you don't really know how the pit stop strategy is going to work on the road courses. Obviously, we're on the ovals. It's a lot more predictable. But let's go over the recap. We have just a completely chaotic start. Denny Hamlin and the Gibbs cars, again, they just proved to not have their setups right at all on these road courses. It makes no sense. They're great on the big courses, and they have just been atrocious on the road courses. Denny Hamlin's car is so bad, he spins, and he ends up at the back of the field, but he spins all by himself. That's how bad his setup was. It was just incredible. Chastain runs into a car on a horrible move, damages his car. Brad Keselowski, his car setup is awful as well. He misses the first turn at 1 point, spins into the grass. Chase Elliott does the same thing. The Toyotas they look really, really bad on these road courses. They're just fade material. The leaders pit before the end of the stage. Stage 1 results, no indication or indicative of how the cars were running. Tyler Reddick looked great as he was leading, and this was kind of foreshadowing. You just knew Tyler Reddick and that crew had their car dialed in. Track position ends up being more important than fresh tires. So we've seen this battle kind of going back and forth this year in NASCAR. Do you take fresh tires? Do you take track position? And honestly, it's becoming pretty clear track position is more important with these new cars, which is a really big flip, and it's something we got to understand as NASCAR bettors. In years past, you always kind of wanted the fresh tires. Like, oh, if he's in second place, no, come in and pit and take 4 fresh Goodyear tires. That's not the case this year. Track position is more important. We're seeing some of the lesser quality cars do much better when they stay out. They get the track position, and some of these better cars that take the fresh tires aren't able to make their way through the field, and these crew chiefs and teams are trying to adjust to it. And we saw it again here at Indy in the road course, that track position was more important. So we have an insane accident as Kyle Larson, it looks like he loses his brakes. He goes flying through the corner into Ty Dillon, and that could have been really, really scary. Really glad both of those guys are okay. But the odd thing is Kyle Larson's team says there was nothing wrong with his brakes after the race. So if you watch that race, you know how terrifying that could have been if Larson did not actually hit Ty Dillon. He could have gone flying into the barricades at full speed. So glad those guys are okay. Harvick and Bowman, they wreck each other. Christopher Bell blows a tire. This is key because we get a restart with 4 laps to go. It's complete chaos. I would say 25% of the field spins or hits somebody or anything. They're trying to go 5 wide into turn 1, and it doesn't work. We get a yellow. We restart again. and we get the infamous Ross Chastain using the NASCAR access road to avoid turn one. And to be honest, I don't blame him. It was really smart. Everyone is wrecking themselves into turn one. He goes flying past turn one, uses the NASCAR access road, which is supposed to be reserved for fire trucks and all the safety personnel. He comes out in the lead. It doesn't last. Tyler Reddick goes by him, and then, of course, at the end of the race, NASCAR says, no, you don't get to finish in second place. So they penalize him 30 seconds. He goes all the way back to 27th. It was pretty funny because he's locked in the playoffs. Why not try something like that? I fully supported the move. And guys like him and guys like Denny Hamlin and some of these guys that are locked in the playoffs, they can afford to take chances on that. So your top five, which nobody, and I mean nobody in a million years would have expected Tyler Reddick, Austin Cindric, Harrison Burton, Todd Gilliland, and Bubba Wallace to be your top five at the road course. But this is where we are. So a lot of underdogs cashing big tickets. We've talked about Bubba Wallace. And Bubba Wallace continues to put up good finishes when he has his pit crew that is performing well. So shout out to Bubba Wallace. He's been fade material for several years, but it looks like that team is getting it together, and he's probably a bet on at this point. There's no more fade Bubba Wallaces as far as bets. Let's take a look at Formula One. We have the Hungarian Grand Prix full of drama there too as well. We'll just recap it real quick. George Russell gets a great start. Ferrari tucks in behind them, so George Russell is leading. Ferrari definitely has the better cars. Red Bull both gets great starts. They're starting mid-pack. Alpine of Alonso and Ocon end up racing each other, which I'm sure the team wasn't that happy about. Ferrari clearly have the best cars. I mean, clearly, first part, middle of the race. And then Ferrari does the unthinkable. And I mentioned this. I watched last week's Life in the Fast Lane episode because I wanted to see how much I called this correctly. At the 12-minute mark, I talked about how Ferrari just keeps shooting themselves in the foot, and then they're their own worst enemy. They do it again. They bring in Charles Leclerc, who has the race in the bag. He's going to win this, and they put on hard tires. This is a fireable offense. The reason is it's such a bad decision because Fernando Alonso had come in earlier on a different team, put on hard tires. It looked like he was dragging an anchor behind his car. The tires are like concrete. They're terrible. Leclerc comes in on hards, and it's a disaster. Max Verstappen gets around him, never looks back. Mercedes, again, they don't have the best cars, but they have the best strategies, and they do not make mistakes. My best bet on last week's show was Lewis Hamilton to finish on the podium, and we cashed that. Why? Because Ferrari messes it up. The next thing you know, the race is over, and all of a sudden, there's Lewis Hamilton sitting there on the podium. Ferrari, I don't know what's going on with them. They had a really, really bad moment when one of their head chiefs of strategy, he left the race early. He knew he screwed it up, so instead of taking it like a man and doing the interviews, he left before the race was over, and that tells you all you need to know about where Ferrari is right now. This is a really good break for them. They got to get their act together because they are throwing away races that they have the best cars, and it's inexcusable in that sport. So Valtteri Bottas, heartbreaker at the end. He was top 10, had to retire. Lando Norris, Fernando Alonso, Ocon, Vettel round out the top 10. Daniel Ricciardo was terrible after 2 straight top 10 races, and the Haas cars were back to being awful once again. So we'll have to see what updates the Formula One cars do. And let's get to the Stenhouse Award. For those of you that don't know, the Stenhouse Award is the biggest screw up, the funniest moment, or the unforced error award. And we have to start with Formula One. Ferrari once again manages to lose a race that they had the best car. They put hard tires on Charles Leclerc. They had information telling them the hard tires were awful, and Leclerc was flying on the mediums. No reason to do that. They were going to win, and instead they finished 6th. Let's move to NASCAR for the nominees. Denny Hamlin, once again, horrible setup to start the race, spinning all by himself. Kyle Larson loses his brakes and flies into Ty Dillon. We touched on that. Harvick and Bowman wreck each other. Christopher Bell blows a tire with 6 laps to go. I also have to shout out to AJ Allmendinger, who we cashed a really good bet on Allmendinger as part of the package at WagerTalk.com. But so on Saturday, he has to race in the Xfinity race. And then the NASCAR race on Sunday, he's racing in. And me living here, I know it's, in the high 90s, so it's really hot. So in the NASCAR race, his cooling suit stops working right as the race starts. And at the end of the race, they don't have any water in his water bottle. The guy's so dehydrated. He's dying of heat, and they cannot get him cooled off. They cannot get him water. And then last nominee is Ross Chastain using the NASCAR access road on the last restart to avoid all the carnage in turn 1. The winner is clearly Ferrari putting hard tires on Charles Leclerc. This is multiple weeks in a row that Ferrari has totally screwed up their strategy. They had a win. They threw it away. I don't know how many times this keeps happening for Formula One before there's big time changes. This is a multi-billion-dollar sport, and mess-ups like this are just inexcusable. They should have won the award last week if it weren't for Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch getting disqualified. So the winner, congratulations to Ferrari and Charles Leclerc for you should have won, and instead you finished 6th. Let's move to this week's NASCAR race. We're in Michigan. This is a big track, high banks. Before the new cars, this was a big Ford track. But here's what we know about NASCAR this year. The Gibbs cars, you fade them on the road courses, and you bet on them on the big tracks. I expect really, really good things from Gibbs. They had a horrible week, once again, at a road course. So let's take a look at the best average finish the last 5 races at Michigan. Number 1, Martin Truex, Gibbs car. His average finish is 4.6. Kevin Harvick, Mr. Michigan. His average finish the last 5 races is 4.8. But boy, if you go back through Kevin Harvick's entire career, this is Harvick's one of his favorite tracks to race on. Number 3, Denny Hamlin, Gibbs car. His average finish is 5.2. Number 4, Kyle Busch, Gibbs car. 5.4 on his average finish. And then Kyle Larson, his average finish is 6.7. Even though he got suspended, he raced in only 3 of the last 5 races. But if you see a theme there, Martin Truex, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, those are your 3 of your top 4 best finishes here at Michigan, which leads to our free bet for this week. And I've said, when I get a big track, I want to bet on the Gibbs cars if we get a great matchups. And DraftKings, so generous this week to give us our free bet, which is Martin Truex over William Byron. Big track. You just got to go with the Gibbs cars, and you got to bet on them. And we get Martin Truex, the best average finish last 5 races. Truex, he's been improving as the season has gone on. William Byron has not. William Byron average finish the last 5 races at Michigan, 10.8. William Byron has no top 10 finishes on oval tracks since April 9th, and that was Martinsville and the week before at Richmond, which are short ovals. This is a huge, big bang, high-speed oval. Truex has finished ahead of William Byron on 7 straight big oval tracks this season. I'm sticking to my theory. I'm going to bet on Gibbs cars when they're on the big tracks, and we get a good matchup when it presents itself. We got to pounce. And this is a really, really good premium bet. I'm giving it out on this show. Everyone should cash this one. If you have DraftKings, get it in now, because for some unknown reason, William Byron is the favorite. That is not going to last long. So give me Martin Truex over William Byron. And when you're doing your handicapping, just make sure you look at some of these Gibbs cars. If you get him against Penske cars, if you get him against Hendricks cars, obviously take out Chase Elliott because he's kind of in a different tier all by himself. But look at the Gibbs cars and free bet Martin Truex over William Byron. Guys, we're coming off a really good rebound week, 4-0 in all of our auto racing. We're still hitting over 60% after our down week a couple weeks ago. Go grab that play, and all of our other plays are on WagerTalk.com. Guys, make sure you leave your comments below. Tell me who you like this week at Michigan. It should be a really profitable and bettable race. Let's make it a profitable weekend. And I will see everybody next week on Life in the Fast Lane.